Right after I paid their $212,000 business debt, I got an anonymous video. Watch this now. I opened IT and saw my mentor's family pitching the same company to another investor. He thinks it's his, 40,000 bucks extra, and it's yours. They laughed. I sent the video to our chat, canceled the transfer, and arrived with the contract. But the real shock was waiting inside. I woke up to the buzzing of my phone at 3 a.m. I was half asleep, barely registering the vibration on my nightstand. But when I saw the video notification from an unknown number, curiosity beat exhaustion. I rubbed the sleep from my eyes and hit play, not expecting anything other than a wrong number or spam. But the second the video loaded, I bolted upright. It was Gerald, my former professor, my mentor, standing in the middle of the tech lab we'd built together. Elise and Brandon, his kids, were there too, laughing around the 3D printer I just saved from auction with a $212,000 transfer. The printer we designed from scratch. The one we were supposed to use for life-saving medical parts. Gerald was grinning, smug and energized, like he'd just nailed a pitch. He thinks he saved us, he said, holding up a glass of champagne. But for a $40,000 bonus, it's yours. Then came the laughter. Elise practically doubled over. Brandon high-fived the investor I didn't recognize. A handshake sealed the deal. A secret licensing or sale or God knows what behind my back. I didn't move for a full minute. I just sat there, the glow of my phone screen painting the room in that sterile blue light, watching as the people I trusted most celebrated a betrayal. My stomach turned. My breath went shallow. I fumbled for my banking app with trembling fingers. The transfer hadn't fully cleared. It was still processing. I hit cancel. Denied once. Tried again. This time it worked. Transfer canceled. My pulse slowed just enough for me to focus. I threw the comforter off and stumbled across my apartment, yanked open the desk drawer, and pulled out the contract, the one that said I was co-founder and majority stakeholder. It still had my name at the top. Still bore Gerald's signature from that drunken night when he promised me, "You're family now, Jordan. My kids are your partners." A sick laugh escaped my throat. Family. I sat down on the edge of my couch, the contract in one hand, phone in the other, the video still playing in my head. I'd sold my car for that money, liquidated my emergency fund, put every bit of faith I had into Gerald and his dream. And this was the thank you. No sleep came after that. Just anger, quiet, cold, focused. I wasn't their partner. I was their wallet, but not anymore. By 7:15 a.m., I was already inside the shared startup space we'd rented on the edge of Berkeley. The sun was barely up, but the lights were already on. Gerald always liked to come in early, said it made him feel closer to the grind. Today, I was beating him to it. The elevator doors opened to the hum of machines and the faint scent of solder and stale coffee. I walked straight through the glass doors, contract in hand, my boots echoing on the polished concrete floor. I didn't bother to say good morning. Gerald sat at the communal table, sipping coffee like he didn't have a care in the world. Elise was on the far side of the room, laptop open, earbuds dangling. Brandon looked up from his standing desk and smirked. "You look like hell," he said. "Rough night?" I ignored him, walked right up to Gerald. He looked up, eyebrows raised like this was some friendly drop-in. "Jordan, you're early." I dropped the contract on the table between us with a loud smack. He didn't flinch, just leaned back slowly, sipping his coffee. Brandon chuckled behind me. "Is this about the money? You think this is funny?" I asked, my voice low, almost shaking but not quite. "Explain the video." Elise pulled her earbuds out and groaned. "Oh, God, you're not seriously throwing a fit over that, are you?" I turned toward her. "So it's true. It's called strategy, Jordan," she said, standing. "We were just working an angle." Gerald cleared his throat. "Let's not escalate this." "You stood there," I said, looking him dead in the eye. "In the lab I helped fund, showing off the printer I just paid to keep alive. Then you offered it to a stranger for a bonus." He set his mug down and finally leaned forward. "Jordan, we're not selling the company. We're licensing the tech. It's a smart move. Brings in capital. Without telling me?" I snapped. "Without even consulting me?" Elise shrugged. "We didn't think you'd get it." Brandon finally spoke up. "Look, man, you wanted to play founder, right? You got your name on the paperwork. Congrats. But let's not pretend you didn't jump at the chance to throw money at us. You wanted in because it made you feel important." He stepped closer, arms crossed. "And we let you. That was the deal. You pay. We build." "No," I said, my voice firmer now. "I paid. I own it." I pointed to the contract on the table. Gerald looked at it like it was a dead animal. "That's outdated." "Not legally," I said. "My name is still on the articles of incorporation. I'm still majority stakeholder. You don't get to cut me out." Brandon scoffed. "You really gonna pull that card?" "You bet I am." The silence after that was dense. Gerald leaned back again. Elise rolled her eyes. Brandon just stared, chewing his cheek like he wanted to say more but knew better. I didn't wait for their next lie. I turned and walked out. I'd said enough. Now it was time to prove it. I didn't go home. I couldn't. My head was spinning, my hand shaking just enough to make the keys rattle in the ignition as I sat in my car in the parking garage. Majority stakeholder. I kept repeating it to myself like a mantra, like a shield. They tried to make me feel like some desperate donor, like my money bought me a thank you card, not ownership. But the contract didn't lie. I had the legal right to everything they thought they'd stolen behind my back. By noon, I was at the bank, standing in front of the safe deposit box I hadn't touched since we incorporated. The metal drawer slid out with a hiss. Inside was my own personal insurance policy, copies of all founding documents, early contracts, and, most important, the original licensing agreement I'd helped draft 2 years ago. I scanned it again, carefully this time, combing through every clause. No sublicensing without written consent. No restructuring without board approval. No transfers of IP without unanimous stakeholder sign-off. They'd violated all of it. I took the file, sealed it in a fresh envelope, and stuffed it in my messenger bag. Something twisted in my gut. Not fear. Not exactly. More like clarity. The feeling you get when the final piece clicks into place, and there's no going back. That evening, when I was sure no one else would be there, I returned to the lab. The building was dark, just the low hum of servers and the faint glow from the exit signs. I moved quietly, like I had every right to be there, because legally, I did. The first place I checked was Gerald's corner drawer. Locked, I picked the latch with a thin blade I carried in my wallet. Inside, manila envelopes labeled Contract, Asia, and Bonus Breakdown. I flipped one open. Names I didn't recognize. A licensing agreement with a biotech firm overseas. My name nowhere on it. The other envelope held internal emails printed out, bonus allocations, including one marked Brandon, $40,000 post-signing. I grabbed everything, sealed it back up, and kept moving. In the back storage closet, tucked behind a rack of soldering tools, I found a banker's box half buried under some lab coats. Inside, personal bank statements, payments, wires, side deals, all in black and white. By the time I walked out, the duffel bag over my shoulder was heavy, but not nearly as heavy as what was coming next. The next morning, I booked a private suite at the Apex Collective, a co-working hub in San Francisco that catered to stealth founders and cash-heavy startups. Nobody asked questions there. You paid extra for silence and discretion. That's exactly what I needed. I texted Gerald, Elise, and Brandon from a burner number I use for consulting clients. Let's fix this. I overreacted. One last meeting. Just us. Brandon replied first. Where? I gave them the address and room number. No lawyers. No yelling. Just a clean resolution. They bid immediately. That told me everything I needed to know. They thought I was crawling back. Weak. Eager to stay part of the dream. They had no idea. The suite was sleek, brushed metal, a long conference table, soundproof walls, and a smart screen mounted behind the glass. I laid everything out in folders across the table, neat and deliberate. At 9:02 a.m., the door opened. Gerald entered first, smiling like a father welcoming a prodigal son. Elise strolled in next, all fake warmth and tight blinks. Brandon brought up the rear, I scanning the room like he expected a hidden camera crew. Jordan, Gerald said smoothly, arms open. Glad to see you came to your senses. Let's sit, I said. There's a lot to walk through. Brandon smirked as he pulled out a chair. We don't have long. Big things happening today. Yeah, I said. I know. Once they were seated, I pressed play on the video I'd queued up. The same one I'd received that night. The one with their laughter, their betrayal. Gerald's jaw clenched mid-sip of coffee. Elise froze. Brandon blinked like he wasn't sure what he was watching. Then, I dropped the folder in front of them. Bonus contracts. A second licensing agreement. Side payments. Gerald flipped through one document and muttered. Where did you get these? Your office, I said casually. Well, our office. I have keys, remember? Brandon stood suddenly. You're insane. This isn't. Elise, I interrupted. You want to explain why you signed off on an agreement that required unanimous board approval? Without the majority stakeholders' consent. Her eyes went wide. I didn't wait for them to speak. I turned to the door and knocked twice. The investor from the video walked in, flanked by a sharply dressed woman carrying a thin briefcase. His eyes locked on Gerald with pure disgust. You lied to me, the investor said. Told me you had clear ownership. Told me the tech was yours to sell. Gerald stood up, so fast his chair screeched. No, this is just a misunderstanding. She saw the video too, I said, nodding toward the briefcase. The woman dropped it on the table and opened it. Inside were printed legal complaints, prepared depositions. Brandon sank back into his chair. You sold a stake you didn't legally control, I continued. You forged executive approvals. You funneled unauthorized bonuses from company funds. Gerald tried to laugh it off. Come on, Jordan, we're family. You were, I said, until you sold me out for a $40,000 bonus. The investor slammed his folder shut. You're done, all of you. And for the first time, nobody had anything smug to say. Gerald's face had gone from red to pale in under a minute. Elise stared at the table like it would open up and swallow her. Brandon just sat there, arms crossed, mouth tight, blinking too much. But I wasn't finished. Thought I'd wrap this up with one last surprise, I said. I pulled out a second envelope, thinner, more surgical. I opened it carefully and slid a single page across the table. Gerald leaned in to read. The moment his eyes caught the first line, he recoiled like it burned. This, I said, tapping the page, is a copy of a loan agreement filed with Greystone Capital. It's for $500,000. Brandon squinted at it, confused. So, keep reading. Elise's eyes moved fast across the document. Then she gasped, a sharp intake of breath that made Gerald flinch. It's signed by me, I said, letting that hang in the air. Or at least, someone pretending to be me. Brandon shook his head slowly. No way. Oh, there's more. They used my driver's license, my old pay stub, and even my passport number. All stolen, all submitted with forged digital signatures. The IP address. I pulled out a second page. Logged from this very office's Wi-Fi. You're bluffing, Gerald said, voice hoarse. I dropped a USB drive onto the table. Forensics says otherwise. Bank metadata, timestamps, usage logs. And guess who the listed contact was on the form? Gerald R. Wallace. Elise finally spoke, her voice trembling. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know. Brandon looked between them. You used Jordan's identity? You forged a loan in his name? Don't act like you're innocent. I shot back. You signed off on the spending. That money went somewhere. Want to talk about the company Porsche you leased with those funds? The investor beside me was quiet, but his expression said it all. Disgust, betrayal, and now something else. Calculation. This changes everything, he said. If you lied about ownership and falsified loan credentials, this isn't a civil problem anymore. It's criminal. Gerald turned to him, desperate. Wait, listen. No, I cut in. You listen. I pulled a printed notice from my coat pocket. I've already filed with the state attorney's office. Fraud, embezzlement, identity theft. Charges are coming. Oh, and since I'm still the majority stakeholder, I've also filed for an injunction to freeze all business activity until the investigation is complete. Brandon jumped to his feet. You're destroying everything. No, I said. You destroyed it the moment you tried to build it on fraud. Gerald's voice cracked. You don't understand. We needed that cash flow. We were drowning. I stood slowly, meeting his eyes. And instead of asking for help, you stole from me. The silence was brutal. Elise buried her face in her hands. The investor walked out without another word. And the family I once trusted? They finally looked scared. By noon, I was sitting in a downtown bank branch across from a manager who suddenly looked very, very nervous. The office was too warm. Her hand hovered over the forged loan documents I had just laid on her glass desk, her eyes scanning each line as if hoping something, anything, would prove me wrong. Mr. Klein, she said finally, voice tight. I need a moment to speak with our legal department. Take your time, I said, folding my hands calmly. But you should know I've already filed a fraud report with the state. Her lips parted slightly, the color draining from her face. You've already filed? And contacted the FTC and the California Attorney General's office. I'm just here to make sure your bank's response is part of the official record. She stood quickly, the papers still in her hand. Excuse me. She disappeared down the hall like her shoes were on fire. I sat there, staring at a cheap watercolor painting on the wall, a vineyard, probably chosen to relax people who were being denied small business loans. I wasn't angry anymore, just focused, detached. They didn't think I'd go this far. That was the part that stunned me most. 15 minutes later, she returned with two other people, a man in a blazer with a tablet and a stern-looking woman in legal compliance. Mr. Klein, the man began, we've reviewed what you provided, and he tapped something on his screen. You were correct. These documents should have triggered verification flags. They did not. That's on us. The legal rep cleared her throat. We've frozen the accounts associated with the loan, effective immediately. If funds were transferred elsewhere, our fraud division will initiate clawbacks. Good, I said, because I'm filing a civil suit, too. That same afternoon, my attorney, Lila Mindel, an absolute beast in a courtroom, filed a case, embezzlement, corporate fraud, identity theft, and misrepresentation. We named Gerald, Brandon, and Elise individually and as officers of the company. By the end of the day, every bank account under the startup's name had been locked. Emails flew out to investors, flagged by our court filing. I made sure the original contracts, the forged documents, and the licensing deals were included in an encrypted dossier. Then I forwarded that dossier to every mutual contact we had, academic partners, early prototype sponsors, and 2 universities where Gerald still gave the occasional guest lecture. No more secrets. By nightfall, the group chat we'd used to run internal comms was dead silent. Not one message. Not even an attempt at spin. They knew. The next morning, a story popped up on a local tech blog. Bay Area startup accused of internal fraud by own co-founder. I didn't plan it, but I sure didn't mind it, either. The truth was out now, and there was no walking it back. Less than a week later, the startup was dead in the water. The investor pool dried up fast. Once the documents circulated, nobody wanted to be associated with a company under fraud investigation, especially not one being sued by its own majority stakeholder. The bank freezes locked up every dollar. Even the cleaning crew stopped showing up after their last check bounced. I waited until the place was truly empty before going back. It was surreal. The main lab sat in eerie silence, the whir of machines replaced by stillness. Half-finished prototypes were abandoned on workbenches. A whiteboard still had equations scrawled on it. Someone had started solving something and just stopped. I walked slowly through the hallways, my footsteps the only sound. Every corner of this place had once meant something. Every cable, every shelf, every bolt. I had poured myself into this lab like it was a second home, like it mattered. Now it was just air and echoes. Downstairs in the basement server room, it was worse. Someone had tried to wipe the drives, the monitors blinked, NO system found. A prototype of our last-gen printer had been smashed against the tile, plastic cracked, internal wiring exposed. But that wasn't the part that stopped me. No, what made me stand still was the wall display. There used to be a long corkboard covered in team photos, milestones, R&D breakthroughs, late-night pizza runs. Back then, Gerald insisted on printing everything, said it made the place feel more real. I walked over, heart pounding. At first glance, the photos were still there, but on closer inspection, I saw it. They'd cut me out, not cropped, cut, with scissors, ripped, and taped over. In one photo, someone had drawn a big red X across my face with a Sharpie. I reached for a photo of our first conference booth, all of us standing in front of a banner with the old logo. I remembered how proud I was that day, wearing the dumb branded polo like it meant something. But in the photo, my image had been scratched out. They didn't just betray me financially. They tried to erase me. I stood there a long time, surrounded by what used to be my dream, now twisted into something cold and broken. It wasn't just the fraud. It was personal. It always had been. And now, with everything gone, they didn't even have the courage to face what they did. I didn't take any photos with me. I didn't need to. They'd already made themselves history. I was the one still standing. Court was scheduled for a Wednesday. The kind of day you don't expect your life to be decided, right in the middle of the week, as if justice works on a lunch break. I showed up early, alone. No fanfare. No cheering section. Just me, my lawyer Lila, and a thick binder of receipts. Gerald arrived looking like a deflated politician. His suit was wrinkled, tie crooked. Brandon trailed behind him, fidgeting with his cufflinks like it mattered. Elise came last, in sunglasses and silence, her face pale and unreadable. They avoided eye contact. Inside the courtroom, it didn't take long. Lila laid everything out with machine-like precision. First the contract, my name, my stake, my authority. Then the licensing violations, the forged loan, the bank's internal emails, my canceled wire transfer, the secret bonus memos with Brandon's signature. She even showed the video. Every lie, every backdoor deal, all of it dragged into the light. Gerald's attorney tried to spin it, said I'd misunderstood, that the licensing was just a proactive pivot, that the loan was misfiled paperwork, that I was emotionally attached and not thinking clearly. The judge didn't buy a word of it. When it was time for Gerald to speak, he tried one last card. He stood up, his voice trembling with practiced emotion. Jordan was like a son to me. This company was supposed to be our legacy. We may have made mistakes, but we never meant to hurt him. I didn't flinch. The judge did something I wasn't expecting. He looked right at me. Mr. Klein, would you like to respond? I stood slowly. My heart wasn't racing anymore. I was past that. I was never your son, I said, facing Gerald. I was your plan B, your ATM, your exit strategy. You didn't build a legacy. You built a trap. And when I saved you from collapse, you turned around and cut me out. The courtroom was silent. You don't get to call it family just because I signed the checks, I added. You were a project, nothing more. The judge nodded once and turned back to his notes. An hour later, the ruling was delivered. Full control of the company was restored to me. Gerald and his children were ordered to pay restitution for damages and return all misappropriated funds. The loan fraud was referred to the district attorney for potential criminal prosecution. A permanent injunction barred them from accessing company assets in any form. I had one. Outside the courthouse, the sun was sharp and cold. Gerald sat on a bench with his head in his hands. Elise stood beside him, arms folded. Brandon leaned against a pillar, staring at the ground. I walked past them. Elise looked up, eyes glassy. Jordan, she started. I didn't stop. I didn't speak. They had said enough already. This time, I had the final word, and it came with a gavel. A week after the verdict, I stepped back into the lab. Not to gloat, not to dig through wreckage, to rebuild. The front door still creaked the same way. The lights buzzed for a second before fully kicking on, but everything else was different. No Brandon's sneakers kicked up on the desk. No Gerald shouting from the conference room. No Elise whispering on the phone about pivot strategy. Just quiet. Mine. I walked through the main workspace, slowly peeling the tape off the nameplate that had once been covered. My name, right there in etched metal, Jordan Klein, founder. The prototype lab was a mess. Half-assembled components, tools scattered. One of the demo drones had been left mid-disassembly, like they walked out during a tantrum and never looked back. I didn't care. I rolled up my sleeves and started picking it all up, piece by piece, wire by wire, screw by screw. I moved without thinking the way I used to when this place still held hope. I cleaned for hours, dragging bins of trash out, collecting salvageable equipment into neat rows. At some point, I even swept the floor. By evening, the place looked almost new. Almost. The photo board downstairs was gone. I'd taken it down quietly, not out of spite, just necessity. It didn't hurt anymore. It just didn't belong here. In its place, I put up something else. Blueprints. Printouts of new designs, sketches from old notebooks, napkin drawings I'd kept shoved in drawers for years. A layout for a new portable printer. A concept for biodegradable components. The stuff they said was too niche, not investor-friendly. The stuff I believed in. Then I unrolled a fresh corkboard. I started pinning up my own photos, not from the past, but from my travels. Places I'd never shown them. Barcelona, Tokyo, Zion. A solo trip to Banff that I'd never even told Gerald about. Each one reminded me of who I was before I got pulled into their orbit. Later that week, I deposited the first reimbursement check from the court ruling. I didn't even blink. Just signed the back and moved on. Money wasn't the win. Control was. By the end of the month, the The space felt alive again. Not crowded, not chaotic, just honest. I wasn't hiring a team. Not yet. This time, I'd build it slowly, on my terms. I'd start small, fund it myself. No outside hands. No golden mentors. No strings. For the first time since I handed over that first check, I wasn't chasing anyone else's dream. I was building my own. It was a quiet Thursday night when the knock came. Soft but steady, not impatient, not timid. Just enough to let me know someone was out there. I wasn't expecting anyone. The lab was locked, lights low. I'd been sketching out wiring diagrams on the whiteboard, half listening to a podcast, half lost in my own thoughts. When I opened the door, I had to blink twice. Trey, Elise's ex, the one who used to code back-end architecture for the prototype software. The one they pushed out without explanation right before I came on board. He looked leaner now, older, but not tired, just clearer. He held up one hand like he wasn't sure I'd even let him in. "I'm not here to stir anything up," he said. "I just figured. You deserve to know it was me." I leaned against the doorframe. "The video?" He nodded. "I was working contract gigs. Came back one night to grab a server backup I'd left. Saw them toasting you like a joke. Figured you should see what they really thought." I didn't speak right away. I wasn't sure what to feel. Trey shrugged. "They did the same thing to me, you know. Took my name off the patents. Told investors I was an early consultant instead of co-founder. Said I was too much of a liability." I stepped aside. "You want a drink?" He smiled faintly. "Sure." We sat in the lab kitchen, 2 stools, and an open bottle of scotch I'd forgotten I had. Trey took one sip and winced. "Still tastes like success and regret." I chuckled. "More like revenge and oak." He nodded toward the wall, where the new blueprints were pinned. "Looks good in here. Different. Better. Working alone now," I said. "It's simpler." Trey swirled his drink. Smart. Silence settled. Not awkward. Just honest. After a moment, he stood. "I won't take up more of your time. Just wanted you to know you weren't crazy. They were always like that. They just hide it well." He walked toward the door, then paused. "You're gonna do better without them, Jordan. You already are." I didn't argue. I didn't need to. I just nodded once. And when he left, the lab felt quiet again, but not empty. Peace doesn't always come loud. Sometimes, it knocks once, then leaves you to get back to work.